Maumee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. It's August 9th, 2020. Megan, please start with our opening song.
Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Kessling-Rogers, and I'll be presenting today with my beloved husband of 28 years, Rick Rogers. Robin Perry and Megan Rancier are providing me with technical support. So thank you all again for tuning in today. We're glad that you can keep in touch and support the community, and even if we can't be together in person. Please be aware that we are, of course, recording this service, and we're going to be posting it on Facebook and YouTube. We seek inspiration and meaning from a great many faith traditions and philosophies. We support each other's lifelong spiritual journey, and we encourage work for justice and peace. We value open minds and loving hearts. Here, may our minds stretch, our hearts open, and our spirits deepen. So even though we can't be together physically, we can still reach out to each other by email, phone, social media, and video chatting. Physical distancing does not need to mean emotional distancing. So let us support one another. Please take a moment and welcome all of your friends, think of your friends, and possibly greet them in a comment in the chat box. We are a diverse group with varying beliefs. Our services are also varied in format, tone, and topic. The services to gain a better understanding of the congregation. If you'd like to receive our weekly email newsletter, please email us at news, N-E-W-S, at mvuuc.org. MVUUC remains committed to supporting our members and friends during this difficult time of social distancing. So for that reason, we are coordinating assistance with things like groceries, phone calls, and other needs. If this sounds like something that would be helpful to you, please send an email to sac@mvuuc.org with your name and the kind of assistance you would like to request. Now is the time for announcements. Announcements can be sent ahead of time always to services@mvuuc.org to be read by Robin on the air. If you have an important announcement right now, you can raise your hand by using the button in the participants area called Raise Hand button. Then we will announce your name and turn on your mic and camera so you can make the announcement yourself. So Robin, are there any announcements today?
There are currently no announcements in the services@mvuuc.org email. There are no announcements via hand participants, and there are currently no announcements in the chat box.
Okay, well, we know that the Hogwarts school
Oh, just kidding. Megan has one.
Oh, okay.
Let me unmute you, Megan. There you go.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. We had our first meeting of the MVUUC Anti-Racism Book Club last Tuesday, and we're going to have our second meeting this Thursday. So that is August 13th at 7 p.m. and we meet through Zoom. So if you want to join us and you haven't already gotten in touch, you can email me at sac@mvuuc.org. Thank you.
All right, and then we have another announcement that the Hogwarts Virtual Summer Camp is starting tomorrow, and we're all very excited for that. And I am also going to be a house leader, so that'll be fun and exciting. So,
a magical time, to be sure. Okay, so let's start the service with the chalice lighting. The chalice will be lit today by Megan Rancier. Please in the comment box or the chat box. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life that we share together. And now Megan will lead us in singing Swimming to the Other Side by Pat Humphries. The lyrics will be posted in the chat box if you'd like to sing along.
We are living neath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. I am alone and I am searching, hungering for answers in my time. I am balanced at the brink of wisdom. I'm impatient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open. Imperfection, it be my crime. In humility, I will listen. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living neath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. On this journey through thoughts and feelings, finding intuition, my head, my heart, I am gathering the tools together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who have come before me, band together and be my guide. Loving lessons that I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living neath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. When we get there, we'll discover all of the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since life's beginning, and we never noticed they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing that we've arrived. Loving spirits will live together. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living neath the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving
was a difficult sermon to write. The opening, because it was about books, and books for me are just like life. They're like air, they're like blood. They just, I can't live without books. So it was very hard for me to put down on paper the meaning, because for me they are the same thing. But here's what I wrote, and I'll share it with you, and we'll see if it resonates. I was a fortunate child. My parents read to me, starting from when I was in diapers. Books were simply a part of playtime. My parents gave me wonderful gifts when they introduced me to books. Curiosity, imagination, openness to new worlds, new ideas. American author Marilynne Robinson echoes this sentiment. She said, "I was read to as a small child. I read on my own as soon as I could, and I recall being more or less overwhelmed again and again, if not by what the books actually said, but by what they suggested and what they helped me to imagine." In high school, in AP English, I started reading the classics. The works of William Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities, Huxley's Brave New World, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Alexander Dumas, The Count of Monte Cristo, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, Albert Camus' The Stranger, George Orwell's 1984, Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. These titles, it's like the very air is filled with spices and perfume. And there are delightful flavors that fill my mouth, like a flavorful, filling meal. If you want to know the books that are the greatest books that have ever been written, just Google these words. That should be read before you die, or every single book that is on that list, because these books introduces the reader to new to understand the world. Books remind us that we are not alone and that our experiences, both good and bad, have meaning. Books introduced me to new words, new worlds, and new ways of thinking. And I just love the music of in 1992, I married Rick Rogers at the United Methodist. Many things I loved about him was that he was an avid reader too and loved books as much as I did. So during the early years of our marriage, I helped him with his dissertation, which was about an early church bishop called Theophilus of Antioch, who preached a type of Christianity without Christ. In Theophilus's writing to a Roman pagan friend, he writes about the emerging faith that we now know as Christianity, but he doesn't include Jesus or his death or his resurrection as part of the story. And I found that very confusing. Rick reminded me that the early church, the developing church, was very different from what we think it was. There were many, many versions of Christianity in those early years. And it's important to remember that not even Jesus was a Christian. He was a Jew who was speaking to other Jews about the socio-political concerns of the day. He was a Middle Eastern man who was brown, probably illiterate or very close to illiterate. and from a lower class of society that was called the artisans as a carpenter. His mother, Mary, by the century after Jesus' death. We believe it was later added as a storyline in order to compete with the other gods, small g, in the region who had had miraculous births. So apparently special births were good PR and marketing. This blew my mind as a good, sweet Christian kid. It didn't fit the Jesus that I grew up with. My Jesus was handsome and suave and sweet and kind and clean and erudite, Cobain with a deep tan. At that time, my husband handed me a book by a New Testament scholar named Dominic Crossan, and it rocked my world. And while reading it, that I would lay in bed at night shaking in fear because I was letting go of notions of what I believed in God and Jesus and the Bible as I morphed into a new person with this information from this book. I lost my belief in that whole construct of Christianity that I was raised on as a kid. And it was a terrible, frightening moment in my life. But those moments also set me free. I was free from dogma and the fear of letting God down. I was free to understand the comforting, structuring role that almost every major world religion provides to human beings. And I was free to believe that kindness is the center of a personal religion. Simply being kind to yourself and to other human beings, that's all you really need to know. Right now in our Perrysburg apartment, Rick and I provide a home to 11 bookcases full of hundreds of books. And at one point in our marriage, we had 22 bookcases full of books. And we had to buy our first home based on finding a room in a home large enough to hold 22 bookcases. So when we're not eating or sleeping or catching up on the news, chances are you'll find us curled up in a chair or in the bed reading a book. And today, my husband, who would like to share with you an author and a book that has impacted him big time, personally and professionally. So for more than 28 years, Rick Rogers has taught comparative religion courses in the history department at Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And he retired in December of last year. But his retirement from academia has not dulled his curiosity or his desire to learn. So we're going to share a video that was recorded earlier. Welcome, Rick Rogers.
Good day. My name is Rick Rogers. I'm a retired professor of religion studies. I earned my PhD from the University of Michigan. Before becoming an academic, I was a clergyman in the Reformed Church of America. My teaching career has focused primarily on world religions and the history of religion in America. I'm going to go through these slides rather quickly, so if you would like to review them, you can do so on the MVUUC YouTube channel. Today, I would like to introduce you to one of my favorite writers and one of his most recent books that I think you might find entertaining and rewarding read during these late summer days. His name is Bart Ehrman, and he is the James A. Gray Distinguished Professor of Religion Studies at the University of North Carolina. He has written or edited 30 books, including 6 New York Times bestsellers and 3 college textbooks, and is a leading authority on the New Testament and the history of early Christianity, with 8 teaching company programs in the Great Courses series. He has appeared on the History, National Geographic, Discovery, BBC, A&E, and CNN channels, on Dateline, The Daily Show, and NPR's Fresh Air programs. And his writings have also been featured in Time, Newsweek, The New Yorker, and The Washington Post. Academics in state universities seldom ask their colleagues about their religion, ideology, or agenda when assessing their research. But the reason this scholar has gained such wide notoriety by the public is because he is one of the world's most famous atheists. Among his 14 books, written for the general public, that have been a great help to me in the classroom are these: Did Jesus exist? The historical argument for Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus, apocalyptic prophet of the new millennium. Peter, Paul, and Mary, the followers of Jesus in history and legend. Jesus before the Gospels, how the earliest Christians remembered, changed, invented their stories of the Savior. And for those of you who like the Dan Brown novels, Truth and Fiction in the Da Vinci Code. The Lost Gospel of Judas Iscariot, a new look at betrayer and betrayed. Lost Christianities, the battles for Scripture and the faiths we never knew. And a book that I think will soon become one on the bestseller list, Heaven and Hell, a History of the Afterlife. His 6 current New York Times bestsellers are these: How Jesus Became God, the exaltation of a Jewish preacher from Galilee. Misquoting Jesus, the story behind who changed the Bible and why. God's Problem, how the Bible fails to answer our most important question, why we suffer. Jesus Interrupted, revealing the hidden contradictions in the Bible and why we don't know about them. Forged, writing in the name of God, why the Bible's authors are not who we think they are. And the book I'm introducing today and have used several times in my course, The History of Early Christianity, The Triumph of Christianity, how a forbidden religion swept the world. It is this book in which we have a very well-known question. How did a minor religious sect become a major religious movement? To put it in other words, beginning with 12 disciples only, how did this religion become the largest in the world with a following today of 2.5 billion? Of course, the Sunday school answer is, and the one that I learned when I was in Sunday school, God did it. As an historian, I cannot confirm that answer. The most popular historical answer, however, is that this guy did it. His name is Constantine the Great, and he was the first Christian Roman emperor who ruled from 308 to 337. There are several stories told about his conversion from paganism to Christianity. The most well-known has 2 slightly different versions, and took place near Milvian Bridge, which crosses the Tiber River into the city of Rome. According to this story, Constantine and his troops had a vision. They looked up into the sky and the day before the battle, and they saw a cross emblazoned with these words, "In hoc signo," by this sign, which Constantine took to mean that by this sign he would conquer the city of Rome. A second version of the story says that in a dream, Constantine looked up into the heavens and he saw this symbol, the Chi-Rho symbol. Chi-Rho are the first two Greek letters of the name Christos, or Christ. It is said that Constantine put the Chi-Rho symbol on his banners, and every time he went into a Roman battle, he won the day. He gave us his first great law called the Edict of Milan in AD 13. This law ensured Christianity is tolerated and would never again be persecuted. It states, "For this, our indulgence, Christians may be able to live securely in their homes." From 27 BC to AD 1453, the entire period of the Roman Empire, Rome had 197 monarchs. All but one ruler after Constantine, he was the 60th monarch, were Christian emperors. One of those Christian emperors was Theodosius I, who reigned from 379 to 395. He also gave us an important law regarding Christianity called the Edict of Thessalonica. This particular law ensured that Trinitarian Christianity would become the state religion. It said, "We authorize the followers of this law to assume the title of Catholic Christians." That term authorized meant require. For the first time in history, we see a marriage of church and state, along with the military. The power and the resources of the emperor were immense. Now, a militarized Christian empire was ruled by an awesome, heavenly connected autocrat. The victims who were persecuted by earlier Roman emperors, these Christians, would now become the victimizers within the Roman Empire. The most popular historical answer to the book's question about how Christianity became an overnight success and today exists as the world's largest religion, as I said before, with over 2.5 billion followers, is that Constantine the Great made it happen. Ehrman's theory does not support this view. He claims this guy made it happen. Many of you will recognize him as St. Paul. This is St. Paul as rendered by the Renaissance painter Rembrandt. Jesus, a Jewish rabbi, was unjustly crucified around AD 30. The Gospel of Mark, which is a collection in the New Testament of the earliest stories about this rabbi, may have been written in the AD 70s. So the question for historians is, what happened in the 40 years between these two events? Paul, who lived between 10 and 67, was a Jewish missionary who, according to Ehrman, revamped the Judaism of Jesus, proclaiming throughout the Roman Empire that Jesus was a divine being whose purpose was to save all people from false religions. As the earliest Christian writer, Paul realized he had to soften his indigenous religion's most disgusting initiation rite. And thus he gives us this first great principle. He replaced the ritual of circumcision with baptism. While not a problem for babies, circumcision was a non-starter for most adult Roman men. As an early Christian thinker, Paul was intensely competitive and took an extremely negative view of all other religions. And thus, Paul gives us the second great principle. He opposed pagan inclusivity with exclusivity. While Roman religions welcomed new ideas, paganism was a pluralistic collection of religions. Paul's religion would not tolerate integration with paganism. Now, what did this mean demographically? Well, it meant that for every Christian conversion, there was, let me go back to that again. That for every Christian conversion, there was a pagan deconversion. In other words, this was a change in demographics of the empire by a factor of 2. Every Christian addition required a pagan subtraction. Paul's plan was brilliant. He universalized the Judaism of Jesus by avoiding offensive Jewish rituals, and he marginalized the paganism of Rome by dismissing all other spiritual practices and ideas. Now, there were other early Christian factors. One was the martyrdom stories, that the martyrdom stories were inspirational, the stories of Christian persecutions were inspirational to many of the citizens and subjects of the empire. 2, miracle stories were entertaining to these same citizens and subjects of the empire. There are some 33 miracles in the New Testament that are recorded that Jesus did. 3rd, healthcare practices were compelling. Healthcare was non-existent in the thought of pagan religion, but common in Christian communities. 4th, inklings about a beautiful afterlife were trendy in the Roman Empire. And as literacy became more common, religion books were in high demand. Early Christians published a lot of their teachings. Paganism did not. So these factors were also extremely important for the spread of Christianity. Under Constantine, 300 years after Jesus, Christians were a large minority. According to Ehrman, they made up about 10 to 15% of the empire. But after Theodosius, a later Christian emperor who died in 395, by his time, half the Roman Empire was Christian. According to Ehrman, there were about 60 million people within the Roman Empire, both citizens and subjects. That means there were about 30 million Christians. Despite these factors and this massive number after the death of Theodosius, Ehrman's book also demonstrates that this rate of Christian growth was statistically speaking really not all that surprising. Well, this is the story of Ehrman's book, The Triumph of Christianity, How a Forbidden Religion Swept the World. I'm confident that after reading this book, you too will become an airman fan. Happy reading.
Thank you, Rick. We really appreciate it. And I'm getting some kind of message on my computer to start my video. There we are. Sorry, we're having a few internet issues this morning, so we're making it work. My husband Rick said that if anybody wanted to talk to him about the book, you could email him at the following email: rrogers@emich.edu. So that's rrogers@emich.edu. And he'd love to hear from you. So the UU Principle Connection. Today's service reflects the fourth UU principle of free and responsible search for truth and meaning. To help me make the connection, I will share the words of the Reverend Paige Getty from the UU congregation in Columbia, Maryland. She writes, "As responsible religious seekers, we recognize that we are privileged to be free and to have resources to pursue life beyond mere survival, to continually search for truth and meaning, to exist beyond bonds of dogma and oppression, and to wrestle freely with truth and meaning as they evolve. This privilege calls us not to be isolated and self-centered, believing that our single perspective trumps all others, but rather to be humble, to be open to the great mysteries of truth and meaning that life offers. And those mysteries may speak to us through our own intuition and experience, but also through tradition, community, conflict, nature, and relationships. As a faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism makes sacred the right and responsibility to engage in this free and responsible quest as an act of religious devotion. Institutionally, we have left open the question of what truth and meaning are, acknowledging that mindful people will, in every age, discover new insights. Now more than ever, we are counting on your pledge payments and donations to help us sustain and strengthen this congregation that is so important to all of us. Supporting our efforts to be a community of love, truth, justice, and service. Please click on the link in the chat box or scan the QR code on this slide. And be sure to select the correct designation on the drop-down box when you donate. Thank you. And now Megan is going to sing the hymn 123, Spirit of Life. The lyrics will be posted in the chat box if you would like to sing along.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Love in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots bending knows, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you, Megan. Author James Baldwin once wrote, "You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world. But then you read, it was books that taught me that the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive, who had ever been alive." Please join me in the reading of the words for extinguishing our chalice, which can be found in the comment section of the chat box. We extinguish this flame, but not the truth, the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. After the service, we're going to turn on all the videos and the mics. Feel free to stay in Zoom and chat with your fellow MVUU members, UUU members and friends for our coffee hour. And please be patient, as turning on the cameras and the mics take a little bit of time, and it takes time to get to everybody. And now for our closing song. Let us sing Go With a Song in Your Heart. You can find the words as a comment in the chat box.
Go with a song in your heart. Go with music in your soul. Live with the memory of a melody. Go with a song in your heart. Go with a song in your heart. Now until we meet again. The joy of music is our gift to you. Go with a song in your heart. Live with the memory of a melody. Go with a song. Go with a song. Go with a song in your heart.
Thanks, Megan. That's the end of the service. Please stay for the virtual coffee hour that follows, and please be patient as Robin turns on your cameras and your mics. Thank you.